Jumping into our last episode on the 2026 rules changes, let's discuss the new concept of player-to-player meetings and the rules that go along with it. The goal here is to increase the pace of play and limit the number of times players call time to hold meetings around the mound or anywhere else on the field. We've all seen the shortstop who likes to call time and jog in to talk to his pitcher, then does the same thing 2 batters later and again later in the inning. This rule exists to eliminate that kind of unnecessary delay. Hey everyone, my name is Patrick Farber with GHSA Baseball Umpire Development and Umpire Classroom, where we help umpires develop their knowledge and skills. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and you can find the other 2026 rules changes and the entire preseason course for the 2026 season at umpireclassroom.com. Let's get started. The first change appears in the definition section under conferences and meetings. The rulebook now includes a brand new Article 3, which says, a player-to-player defensive meeting includes 2 or more defensive players. What's noteworthy here is that this appears in addition to the existing definition of conferences found in Article 1. Article 1 says, a charged conference is a meeting which involves the coach or a non-playing representative of the team and a player or players of the team. So what's important here is that we now have a new term. A player-to-player defensive meeting is not a conference, it's a meeting. And that distinction matters when we start looking at the limits and penalties that apply to each one. This new term doesn't change the definition of a charged conference, it doesn't change the number of defensive or offensive conferences allowed, and it does not count as a defensive conference. This is a completely separate thing, a whole new item for us to track and limit. Rule 3, Section 4 covers defensive player meetings in Article 6. It says, each team, when on defense, may be granted not more than 1 player-to-player meeting during an inning to permit players to confer with defensive personnel. The umpire shall deny any subsequent player-to-player defensive team requests for a meeting for that half inning. So here are the key takeaways. First, a team can use 1 per inning, and it's not per pitcher. In fact, it's not even based on whether or not it includes the pitcher. A team can only request and be granted time for a player-to-player meeting once an inning, regardless of which players are involved. That meeting can also include multiple players. It could be 2 players, it could be 3, it could be the whole infield. Now, like defensive conferences, it's only counted if it delays the game. So we're not counting if during warm-ups before the inning starts, someone goes and talks to the pitcher, or the shortstop and third baseman are hanging out together. That doesn't count. It has to be something that delays the game. If the game's already stopped because we're between innings and the pitcher's warming up, it's not adding a delay. Now note, there's no specific penalty listed with this rule change, so it's likely going to fall under Rule 3-3, which covers bench and field decorum. Now let's look at some examples. First, what does count as a meeting? The catcher calling time to talk to the pitcher after 2 walks, that would be a meeting. What doesn't count, for example, would be if after a called third strike, they're just tossing the ball around the infield and then the third baseman hands the ball to the pitcher after they throw it around and says, hey, good job, and then goes back to his position. That doesn't count because it doesn't add a delay to the game. Same logic applies with a pre-inning huddle before the first pitch. That doesn't count. And another example would be time granted for an injury or an umpire delay. That doesn't count as a player-to-player meeting either. So note that there are a lot of exceptions to this rule, and when you're trying to understand how to apply it, don't get greedy with it. The intent of this rule is for the situation you can all picture in your head that you hate, which is the shortstop or the catcher or whoever just constantly going out there to talk to the pitcher. You know exactly what situation it is. Don't try to expand it outside of that because you'll likely be in violation of the rule if you do. And we'll get into more as we dive into the case plays. Now, there are 2 case plays I want to cover with you before we jump into the quiz case play questions. The first is case play 2.10.3, situation A. The pitcher, while struggling with control, has walked 2 straight batters. The catcher asks for time to go talk to the pitcher. The other infielders come to the mound as well. Ruling: this is a defensive player meeting. Time was granted and the game was stopped for 2 or more defensive players. So there you go, that's one of the new case plays. Simple, right? They call time, get together, and they talk. They all do it at once, so it all counts as one player-to-player meeting. Next, case play 2.10.3, situation C. The center fielder and the left fielder converge on a fly ball, almost running into each other. After the catch, the two discuss coverage as they return to their positions. Ruling: this is not a defensive player meeting. Time was not called and the game was not interrupted for the discussion. So there you go. Before this rule, you were probably never thinking of this type of situation as something you wanted to cut out of the game. Don't suddenly think this situation is now part of why the rule exists. It's not. Again, overexpanding the use cases for this rule is going to be to your detriment. Now, let's really jump into the case plays. Case play number 1. In the third inning, the defensive team's head coach requests time to go to the mound and talk to the pitcher. 2 batters later, F2 requests time to go to the mound and talk to the same pitcher. Is this A, this is legal, only one conference has been used? B, this is legal, the defense has used 2 conferences? C, this is not legal and the defense must now replace the pitcher? The correct answer is A. This is legal and only one conference has been used. Remember, the catcher going out there to talk to the pitcher without the coach is not a conference. That's simply known as a player-to-player meeting. Those are counted separately from conferences. So when the coach went out there earlier in the inning, that was a conference. But no other conference was used because the coach didn't go out the second time. Case play number 2. At the start of a new half inning, the pitcher completes his 5 warm-up throws and the catcher and infield come to the mound to briefly encourage the pitcher. The opposing coach wants this charged as the team's defensive meeting for the half inning. Is this a meeting? The answer is that this is not a meeting. And this is ruled to not be a meeting in the casebook, so there's no interpretation being applied here. The concept, again, is that we don't want players calling time during an inning and slowing down our game. In this situation, it's before the inning has started, and the NFHS casebook ruling for this says specifically that this is not a defensive player meeting because the half inning has not yet started and the ball has not yet been put in play. This kind of goes along with our ruling on conferences, in that a defensive coach standing out there by the mound talking to his pitcher while he warms up between innings is not a conference. Kind of the same logic applying here. These players briefly encourage their pitcher, but it's not adding a delay into the game, at least not as the rulebook interprets it. Case play number 3. F1 strikes out B4. F2 throws the ball to F5, who throws to F4, who throws to F6, who throws it back to F5. F5 then hands it back to the pitcher, says keep it up, and pats him on the back. Is this a meeting? This again is a direct ruling from the casebook. It's not a defensive meeting, as the game was not interrupted and stopped for the ball to be given to the pitcher. The time used here for throwing the ball around really doesn't change, and thus this does not count as the player-to-player meeting. Case play number 4. The defense had a defensive player-to-player meeting earlier in the half inning. A substitute pitcher has replaced the previous pitcher and has completed his warm-up throws. The catcher takes the ball out to the pitcher and discusses signals. Is this a meeting? This is not a meeting. This ruling is given to us in the casebook, and it's an interesting case play because the ruling they give is not necessarily the one I would have gone with, and I think it leads to some contradiction with another case play. The ruling given in this case play says this is not to be considered a defensive player meeting. It is in the best interest of all that the catcher and new pitcher get aligned. Now, when we compare this to some of the previous case plays we've already looked at, the reason I would have said this is not to be considered a defensive player meeting is that time has already been granted for the pitcher to do his warm-up throws. That's already a valid reason to have time. Now, the catcher running out there to briefly talk to him, okay, we could maybe say that's an addition, but again, it's definitely not going to be a player-to-player meeting. What's interesting here is that they add the phrase, it's in the best interest of all that the catcher and new pitcher get aligned. Umpires will certainly all agree it's important for the catcher and pitcher to be on the same page with signals. Otherwise, we're at risk of getting hit by the ball if they're crossed up on a pitch. So we all agree we want that. It's just interesting that they choose to include that reasoning here in this case play ruling. And that leads us directly to our next case play. Case play number 5. In the 5th inning, F1 allows 3 straight hits to begin the inning. F6 asks for time to go to the mound and give his teammate a pep talk. After the meeting, the first pitch to the next hitter crosses up F2, who asks for time to chat with the pitcher about their signals. Is this A, time should be granted, or B, time should not be granted, as this would be the second player-to-player meeting during the same inning? According to the ruling given to us by the NFHS, time should not be granted here because they've already used their player-to-player meeting. That's what's given here in the casebook ruling. It says the plate umpire will deny the request by the catcher to go talk with the pitcher. The team has already had their one defensive player meeting for the half inning. Now, I feel this is contradictory to the previous case play because of what they added in the ruling on the previous case play. In the earlier situation, they emphasized that it's in the best interest of everyone that the pitcher and catcher get aligned. In this more recent case play, it's still in our best interest that the catcher and the pitcher are still aligned on their signals. So if we have an obvious situation where they get crossed up like we have here, why would we not allow them to get together on that? The same logic about the importance of them being in sync should still apply. So here's how I think we should handle it. And this is based on how it's similarly handled in NCAA and OBR. If a team in those two rule sets has used all their conferences, they don't have the meeting-to-meeting concept, don't worry about that. But if they've already used their conferences and they need to fix something with their signals, the catcher can request time to specifically go and get in sync with his pitcher on the signals. And at least in the college rule, the umpire is going to go out there with them to make sure the conversation is only about what the correct signs are, and that's it. I think that's much more in the interest of us as the umpires as well as the game. So the correct ruling here given in the casebook is answer B, that time should not be granted. But I think there's a gray area of, yes, we won't let them have a full player-to-player meeting, but we will go out there to let them very quickly get in sync on their signals. Case play number 6. In a half inning, situation A, R3 leading off from third base in foul territory is hit by a line drive. Situation B, F2 is hit by a foul ball. Situation C, a charged offensive conference with the team's runner and batter is granted. Situation D, the plate umpire is hit by a foul ball and is momentarily stunned. In all 4 instances, the infield gathers together as the hurt individuals are being assisted or the offensive players confer. In each situation, is this a meeting? The correct answer in all 4 is no, this is not a meeting. This is given in the casebook as well as the preseason guide. Time has been granted for a different reason outside of the meeting. And as long as they don't add more delay to the game once whatever situation outside of this is handled, then this will not be counted as a meeting. The same actually applies to conferences by high school rules. If we have an injury to a player, or if we have an umpire go down, or if the opposing side is using a conference, then the defense can get together and meet, and it's not counted as a conference or a player-to-player meeting. And the situation here that had the most people miss it was the one concerning a charged offensive conference happening and the defensive players getting together while that occurs. A conference supersedes a meeting every time. So if we have a conference going on the offensive side, the defensive players getting together does not count as a conference or as a player-to-player meeting. The inverse, though, is not true. If a team is having a player-to-player meeting, the offense is not granted permission for the coach to get with his batter or runners without it being a charged conference. So a charged conference allows the defensive players to get together for a meeting without it counting as their meeting, but defensive players getting together for a meeting does not allow the offense to have a conference that will not be counted. So there you have it, our review of the new player-to-player meetings rule in high school baseball. And this concludes our review of the 2026 rules changes. If you found this video helpful, be sure to subscribe to our channel, and you can find the 2026 preseason course on our website at umpireclassroom.com. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the field.